Good morning, everyone. It's now Thursday morning, and I'm videoing the shir for tomorrow, for Friday, the 20th, I believe. First thing, I'd like to say that I've received a number of text messages or emails or phone calls from Talmudim and from parents. Many of our kids are really doing phenomenally well. Just using their time and doing their best. People are learning with each other, people are enjoying their learning like never before. Even someone called me yesterday, went biking, because if you need to go out and bike, that's doing the best you can. So if you're doing well, reach out to someone else. Same way that the coronavirus can infect, your success can affect others. Share with others, join with others. If we all will reach out and help each other, we are extremely, extremely powerful. And it's amazing that this power seemingly can be generated when we are in our houses by ourselves. Amazing. I just spoke to somebody this morning and said that one day when this is all over, we'll come back to class and see each other. We'll look at each other and say, wow, I cannot believe that each and every one of us had this in us. We did not know. We were just too busy going to school to realize how good and how powerful each and every one of us on our own really was. See if you can daven mincha at the same time at 3:25 when we all daven together and daven for each other. Let me review what we learned yesterday in short. We learned that there were different objects of Kedusha. There was a synagogue, there was an Aron Kodesh, there were covers for a Sefer Torah, there were scrolls of Nevi'im and Ketuvim, and there was a Sefer Torah. And when you sold an object of Kedusha and you got money for it, you needed to buy something of higher Kedusha and could not buy something of a lower Kedusha. There's a dispute between the Rishonim. Is it only prohibited to buy something of a lower Kedusha, or must you buy something of a higher Kedusha? Meaning, can you buy something of the same Kedusha? If you sell an Aron Kodesh, can you use the money to buy another one? That's a dispute amongst the Rishonim. We also learned that our Mishnah and Rabbi Menachem Bar Yossi held that a street in the city had Kedusha because people would daven in the street on occasion. The last 7 fast days of a 13 fast day series, the last 7 fast days were davened in the street. Also when there were ma'amadot, people davened in the street. So since they davened in the street on occasion, the street had Kedusha. The Rabbanan held that since they only daven in the street on occasion, that doesn't really give the street Kedusha. I have yortzeit for my father, Olav Shalom. Today is Chav Gimel Adar. Perhaps today, if I can gather some neighbors together, we'll daven in the street, certainly far from each other, and I'll be able to say Kaddish, but we'll see. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said that you can only sell a Beit Knesset of a village, because that's more of a private Beit Knesset belonging to the village, but a large Beit Knesset in a metropolis belongs to the Jewish people at large. And since they either paid for it or it was made for their use, it cannot be sold because they all have rights to it. Rav Ashi said that in the city of Nachasia, he was the chief rabbi and he was acknowledged as being the leader. So whoever gave money or whoever had rights to the Beit Knesset would give him the power of attorney to do whatever it was he wanted. And therefore, if he wanted, he would be able to sell the Beit Knesset. It was all given or owned with the understanding that he had the authority. We learned that Yerushalayim, which was a very public city, there was a Beit Knesset belonging to coppersmiths, and they sold it to Rabbi Eliezer. But even though Yerushalayim is a large city, but that Beit Knesset only belonged to coppersmiths. It was private, it belonged to them, and if they wanted to sell it, they could. We learned also that there was a dispute whether Yerushalayim belonged to all the Jewish people, or did Yerushalayim belong to Shevet Yehuda and Binyamin. The difference would be, sometimes in the Torah it says that a person could get a nega, a mark on a house, which would make the house tamei, but a house could only be tamei if it's absolute private property. So if Yerushalayim belonged to Yehuda or Binyamin, then people of Yehuda or Binyamin who owned houses had private property, and their house could develop a nega. But if Yerushalayim belonged to the whole Jewish people, it just belonged to everybody, then the houses in Yerushalayim would not be able to become tamei with a nega. So it was a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama. The Tanakama said that Yerushalayim belonged to everyone. And it was interesting that if Yerushalayim belonged to everyone, what happened was when Jews came to Yerushalayim for Pesach, Shavuot, or Sukkot, the inhabitants of Yerushalayim who would welcome the guests but could not charge rent, because the guests would say, Yerushalayim belongs to us as much as to you. Just because you live here all year round doesn't mean that you're the owner, and therefore the residents of Yerushalayim could not charge rent to the guests. But it was considered appropriate that the guests should leave a tip to the hosts. So when they had a korban and they ate the meat, the hide, the skin of the korban, they would leave for their host. Or when they had containers of food and they ate the food, they would leave the container to the host. And as I said yesterday, don't try this at home. It's much preferable when you're visiting someone to leave a bottle of wine or to leave flowers and maybe a sefer. But there was another view that Yerushalayim really belonged to Yehuda and Binyamin. Yehuda owned the east and Yehuda owned the south. Binyamin owned the north and the west. The Beit HaMikdash itself stood on the property on the land of Binyamin, and the Mizbeach also stood on the land of Binyamin, but a strip of land on the east and the south side of the Mizbeach belonged to Yehuda. So according to that view, Yerushalayim belonged to Yehuda and Binyamin. So now let's start a new piece of Gemara on Chavav Amar Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. Amar Rava, Rava says, Lo Shanu, we did not learn that when you celebrate Knesset, you must use the money for a higher Kedusha. Ella only, Shalom Machru Shiva Tu Ve'o'ir. That's only if it wasn't sold by the 7 board members of the city. B'mamad Ansha'ir, either in the presence of or with the authority of the people of the city. Avol Machru Shiva Tu Ve'o'ir. But if the 7 board members of the city sold it, b'mamad Ansha'ir, in the presence or with the authority of the people of the city, Afilu l'mishta be'shechra shaper dami, you're even allowed to drink beer. Now what does that mean? So Rashi has 2 explanations, and listen carefully. There are 2 issues here. Number 1, what do you do with the money that you got for the Beit Knesset? And number 2, what may be done with the Beit Knesset that was sold? Rashi's opinion is, and the Rosh, the Rabbeinu Asher, also agrees, that when the 7 board members sold the synagogue, they had the right to remove the sanctity of the synagogue, that the synagogue now could be used as a bar, and the money they got for the synagogue could be used for whatever you want. And the reason for this is, the Ra'avad explains, Rabbi Avram ben David, that just like Rav Ashi had power of attorney, he had the authority to sell the synagogue in the city of Nachasia, because when it had been sanctified, when the money had been donated, it was donated on the stipulation, on the condition that gave him the right to do as he wished. The same thing is when people in a city give money and dedicate Kedusha, it's all conditional. It's conditional that the board members of the city have the right to do afterwards as they wish. And if they wish to de-sanctify, to deconsecrate the Beit Knesset, they can. And if they wish to take the money they get for the Beit Knesset, they can do with it whatever they want. In fact, if you want to be very technical, you go back to the last few words, there are two texts in the Gemara. One is Lemishta Bey, Shichra, meaning to drink beer in it, that's in the synagogue. But there's another girsa, another text that says Lemishta Behu, meaning to drink with it. With the money that you get, you can even use it to drink beer. Ravina Havale Hahutila de Bekanishta. Ravina had a tila, a mound, a ruin of a former Beit Knesset, but the ruin belonged to him. Oto lekame de Ravashi, he came before Ravashi. Amar Lein, he said to Ravashi, Mahu lemizra'a, can I plant grain? Can I plant things on this mound? Can I use it for regular purposes? Amar Lein, so Ravashi told him, I'll tell you what you do. Zilgo, Zavne, purchase that mound, Mishiva Toveuir, from the 7 board members of the city, B'ma'amad Ansheuir, in the presence or with the authority of the people of the city, and then Vizara, then you can do Kesketuva, you can do whatever you want, because they have the right to deconsecrate it, to take the Kedusha off it. Rami bar Abba have a Kabani Beit Knishta. Rami bar Abba was building a Beit Knesset. Hava hahi Knishta Atika. There was an old Beit Knesset. Hava boi, he wanted lemistere, to demolish the old one, ulatuye, and to bring livni, bricks, ukshuri, and beams, mina, from it, from the old one, va'ayuli, and to bring it lahatam, over there to the new Beit Knesset, to use the materials of the old to help build the new. Yotiv, as I said many times, the tough is like a shin, so he sat, v'kami boyale, and he was wondering, Hader Rav Chizda, this that Rav Chizda says, the Amar Rav Chizda once said, Lo listor Beit Knishta, you're not allowed to demolish a Beit Knesset ad debani, until you've built B'nei Knishta Achriti, a new Beit Knesset. So Hatam, over there, Rav Chizda ruled you can't demolish a Beit Knesset mishum pshiuta, because maybe you'll be negligent. You'll destroy the old one, and maybe you'll decide not to build a new one, and then no one will have where to daven. But ki hai gavna, but in such a case, where the only reason I'm demolishing the old is only to use the materials for the new, what is the law? Ata, he came, l'kamei Rav Papa, in front of Rav Papa, to ask him if it was allowed. And v'asar le, Rav Papa prohibited to demolish the old one, even if you want to use the materials for the new one. Then he went l'kamei, he came in front of the Rav Huna, v'asar le, and he prohibited it as well. What I don't know, it's something to think about, why would Rami bar Abba go to Rav Huna for a second opinion once Rav Papa told him it's not allowed? You're not supposed to do that. Now listen very carefully. The next piece is a bit technical. Amar Rava says, Hai Beit Knishta, if you have a Beit Knesset, which we'll call A, Chalufa, if you exchange it for something, which we'll call B, or Vizabuna, or if you sell the Beit Knesset for cash, and we'll call the cash B, Shari, it's allowed. You can exchange the Beit Knesset for something else, again, assuming you have the right to sell it. Either it's a Beit Knesset that belongs to a village, or you have the right, for whatever reason, you have the right to sell the Beit Knesset, so when you exchange it or sell it, Shari, it's allowed. However, Ogura, to rent the Beit Knesset to someone, Umashkuna, or to borrow money, and then use the Beit Knesset as collateral, like to give the Beit Knesset to the bank, that the bank can use it as they wish until you pay back the loan, Asr, it's prohibited. My Tama, what is the reason? Because Bikdushata Koi, because the Beit Knesset retains its Kedusha. Let me explain. When you exchange the Beit Knesset A for another object which is B, the Kedusha will go off the Beit Knesset onto the object which is B. So you transfer the Kedusha onto something else. If you sold the Beit Knesset and you got cash for it, the Kedusha went off the Beit Knesset and went onto the cash. So now the cash is Kodesh and the Beit Knesset is not. When you rent it, the Beit Knesset is still Kodesh. So therefore you're not allowed to rent it to someone to use for a non-Kodesh purpose, because it's still Kodesh. The Kedusha has never been removed from it. Or if you borrow money and you give the Beit Knesset as collateral to the bank, if the bank is going to use that Beit Knesset, they're using a Beit Knesset that's Kodesh, and therefore it's prohibited. Livni Nami, if there are bricks that came from the Beit Knesset, the same rule. The bricks that came from the Beit Knesset are also Kadosh. So therefore, Chalufinu, if you exchange the bricks that are A for B, or Vizabuninu, or you sell the bricks and you get cash, Shari, it's allowed. Because the Kedusha will go off the bricks that had been sanctified, and either will go on to what you exchanged it for, or it'll go on to the money. But Aizufinu, to lend someone those bricks, also is prohibited. Because to lend it, that the bricks are Kodesh. But Vahani Mili, these words that it's prohibited to lend it is Ba'atikata, only when the bricks are old and they've been used. They were part of the Beit Knesset. Avil B'chadata let lamba. But if they're brand new bricks, which were purchased for construction of a Beit Knesset, that doesn't matter. That you can lend them because they're not Kodesh yet. They were not used for the Beit Knesset yet. They were only purchased. Even according to the opinion that says that Hazmana, dedicating something, Milta he counts, so perhaps here too the bricks that you dedicated for the construction of a Beit Knesset should count and make it Kodesh. Hani Mili, these words that dedication counts, I'll give you an example. Kagon ha'oreg, if you weave beged, a garment, like shrouds, lamet, to bury a corpse. So since you wove the garment for the corpse, the moment you wove it, it's prohibited to benefit from it. But what would be if somebody would have fiber that he spins into thread, and with the thread he plans to weave a garment for the corpse? That doesn't make it prohibited. Only weaving is a step right before the putting it on the corpse. So weaving it dedicates it for the corpse, and it's asr ba'ano, you're not allowed to benefit from it. But spinning thread, that's too far removed, that's too premature to consider it belonging to the corpse. So aval hacha, but here, if you simply went to Renault Depot or Home Depot and you just bought bricks, so that's very premature. Kitavi la'arig dami, that's similar to spinning thread for weaving, and velekal amanda omar, and no one holds that that gives it kedusha. So if the bricks have been used for the Beit Knesset, then it's Kodesh. You can exchange it for something else, and you can sell it, but you can't lend it. But if you merely bought it, buying it is very premature. You haven't really done anything, just bought it. And therefore, then you can still lend it. And the same for a corpse. If you're weaving a garment for the corpse, then you're doing an act for the corpse. Doing the act of weaving the garment for the corpse dedicates it to the corpse, and you're not allowed to benefit from it. But if all you're doing is spinning thread, that's 2 steps premature before it's used for the corpse, and then you are allowed to benefit from it. So the same thing as buying the bricks is still very premature and doesn't have kedusha. Now comes a very sophisticated piece. What about matana? Can the people of a city give the Beit Knesset away as a gift? As a gift? Pligiba, there is a dispute between Rav Acha and Ravina. Chad Omer, one says Aser, you're not allowed to give a Beit Knesset away as a gift. B'chad Shori, and one says you're allowed to give it away as a gift. But we have to understand. Man de Aser, the one that says you're not allowed to give it away as a gift, question mark, Bahai Tifka Kedushata, in this way will the Kedusha be removed? We explained before that if you exchange it for something or you sell it, then the Kedusha of the Beit Knesset can go either onto an object or onto the money. But if you give it as a gift, Bahai, in this way, Tifka Kedushasa, can the sanctity of the Beit Knesset be removed? Where did the Kedusha go? What did it go on to? Iman Deshori, the one who allows it, says, Ilav dahavale hanoamine. If the people of the city did not benefit from the one they're giving the Beit Knesset to, they wouldn't have given it to him. So therefore they must have gotten something from the person that they're giving the Beit Knesset to. So Hadar Havile Matana Kazvini. So the gift now is like a sale, because the Kedusha goes off the Beit Knesset onto whatever it was they received. It's very hard to understand, because if the people of the city actually received an object from someone, and afterwards they give him the Beit Knesset as a gift, I would begrudgingly be willing to understand that they're giving the Beit Knesset away as a gift, and whatever they got before would become sanctified. Well, even though when they got it, it didn't become sanctified, maybe it'll become sanctified now because they're giving a gift, which I don't really understand how when they received it, it was not Kodesh, and now that they're giving the Beit Knesset away as a gift, now whatever they received is going to become Kodesh. It's too late. They already have it. But much worse than that, what happens if the person they're giving the Beit Knesset to is somebody who provided a service? Let's say he was an accountant, or he was a lawyer, or he was a dentist, and he did things for the community, and therefore they decided to give him this building as a gift. Now, what became Kodesh? The teeth? The tax return? The legal case? Before we said that when you have something that's Kodesh and you want to take the Kedusha off, it's got to go on to something else. When you exchanged A for B, the Kedusha of the Beit HaKnesset went onto the B. You sold it, the Kedusha went onto the money. When you gave it as a gift, where did the Kedusha go? And again, I'm asking, if they received something from the person they gave the Beit Knesset to, if they received something from him before, well, okay, but they received it already. How does it become Kodesh now? And if what they received was a service, how does it become Kodesh? I'll try to explain. There is a dispute between the Ramban and the Ran. You know what? Let's leave these questions alone. Let's go on to the Gemara, and eventually I'll get back to this issue. Very important things that we're going to learn here. I'll show you some practical applications that are very interesting. Tanu Rabbana, the rabbis taught in a brayso, Tashmishe mitzvah, objects that were used for a mitzvah. After the mitzvah is over, nizrokim, you're allowed to throw them away. By the way, not in a disgusting manner. Sometimes you have to double wrap it, but you can throw away something that was used as a mitzvah. But tashmishe kedusha, something that was used for kedusha, not just a mitzvah, but for sanctity, something that has Hashem's name, nignoza needs geniza. Now come the examples. Ve'elu tashmishe mitzvah. What are objects that were used for a mitzvah? A sukkah, schach, was used for a mitzvah. A lulav was used for a mitzvah. A shofar was used for a mitzvah. Tzitzit were used for a mitzvah. So once we don't need it anymore, we could throw it away in a respectable manner. Some people have a minhag to be careful with tzitzit though. But ve'elu ein tashmishe kedusha, what are considered objects that serviced kedusha? Duluskemei sforim, sacks that were used for holy scrolls, or tefillin is an object of kedusha. It has Hashem's name in it. Mezuzot also has Hashem's name in it. Tik shall Sefer Torah, the cover of a Sefer Torah, nar tik shall tefillin, the bag of a tefillin, urutzuoteim, and the straps of tefillin. And that's an interesting issue. Are the straps of tefillin kodesh themselves, or are they things that service kedusha? On one hand, they service the kedusha of the bottom that has Hashem's name in it. But on the other hand, the Ritzuot themselves have Hashem's name in it. There's a Dalid in the back of your Shalrosh, and there's a Yud on the Shalyad. So some say that because the Dalid and the Yud are part of Shin, Dalid Yud, the Shin on the bias of your Tefillin, that the Ritzuot are not merely servicing Kedusha, they are Kedusha themselves. So in short, whatever is Kodesh needs Geniza. Whatever is used for mitzvah does not need Geniza. Let me spend some time. If you ever go into school and you'll take a look by the photocopy machine, there's a sign there that says that whoever is making a photocopy of pages from Sforim needs to be careful. If you're photocopying something that has Hashem's name, you're responsible to make sure that those pages go to Geniza, because if it has Hashem's name, it needs Geniza. What about photocopying Divrei Torah, but doesn't have Hashem's name? So it seems that the halacha is as follows. If whatever is photocopied was meant to be used for long-term use, to use as a book or a booklet for repeated use, then it becomes an object of Kedusha that needs Geniza. But if it was used only for temporary use, only one-time use, and doesn't have Hashem's name, then it became an object of a mitzvah, and therefore it could be thrown out as long as you double wrap it. Let me explain more clearly. If a teacher would write a pasuk on the board without Hashem's name, why is that pasuk on the board? It's a tool in order to teach. So it's used to do a mitzvah. It's used to teach. But you can erase it afterwards, because whatever was used for a mitzvah afterwards can be discarded or erased. So the same thing, photocopy of Divrei Torah, but it doesn't have Hashem's name. If it was only meant for a one-time use, so it was used to do a mitzvah, it was used to do the mitzvah of learning Torah, and afterwards can be discarded in a respectable manner. On the other hand, once you photocopied it and you have it for long-term use, then it's not just an object used for the mitzvah of learning, it became an object of Kedusha itself. It became a Jewish book, a book of Torah. And as a book of Torah, it would need a Geniza. So therefore, the sign over the photocopy machine reads, be careful that if you photocopy something that has Hashem's name, you're responsible to see that the copies go to Geniza. If you're photocopying something that doesn't have Hashem's name, if it's for one-time use, it needs to be discarded respectfully because it was used for a mitzvah. But if it's photocopied for long-term use, then it becomes an object of Kedusha, and it also would need Geniza. Omar Rava said that Meresh, in the beginning, Havamina used to say, Hai Kursaya. Kursia is the bima. Tashmish de Tashmishu. It services something which services the Sefer Torah. Why? Because the Sefer Torah goes on top of a velvet cover, and the velvet cover is on the bima. So therefore, the bima, which is under the velvet cover, which is under the Sefer Torah, is a service of the service, v'shori, and therefore it could be discarded. But Kevan, since the Chazina I saw, the Motvi Ilavei Sefer Torah, that sometimes they actually put the Sefer Torah directly on the bima without a cover, without a velvet cloth. Amina, now I realize, Tashmish Kedushahu. Then the bima is used on occasion directly to hold the Sefer Torah. Therefore the bima would not be able to be discarded. You would have to bury it. It would need Geniza, because anything that services a Sefer Torah becomes Tashmishe Kedusha. By the way, sometimes Gaboim that are careful not to lean on the bima, because they're leaning on the cover of the bima, which the cover is Tashmish Kedusha, holds the Sefer Torah, so they won't lean on it. Sometimes you may have noticed that kids sometimes put tissues or a box of tissues on the bima, and I'll take it off and I'll put it on a table, because since the top of the bima services the Sefer Torah, which is Kedusha, it shouldn't hold other stuff. It does hold, and I'm not sure about that, it does hold the box for tzedakah. The box of tzedakah is an object of mitzvah. Also, this mitzvah also is a mitzvah to do during tefillah, so maybe it's okay. I've always seen that it's done. That's why I do it. But certainly not to put non-Kodesh stuff on the bima. Also, if you've ever noticed, when they move a Sefer Torah from place to place, let's say davening in another room, they'll put a talid down on the table before they put the Sefer Torah on it, so that you don't make the table into tashmish of Kedusha, something that services Kedusha directly. Only the talid is under it. Amar Rava also said, Meresh, on debut, in the beginning, Hav Amin, I used to say, Hai Prisa. Prisa was a curtain that they used to have in the interior of an Aron Kodesh. I thought it was Tashmish de Tashmishu. It services the service. The Aron Kodesh services the Sefer Torah, and the curtain is a decorative object which decorates the Aron Kodesh. So the curtain inside decorates the Aron Kodesh. The Aron Kodesh holds the Sefer Torah. So it's service of service, and therefore it could be discarded. Kevan, since the Chazina that I saw, the Eifile, sometimes they double that curtain down, Umanchi Sifra Leve, and they put a Sefer Torah on it. Sometimes they took that curtain out from the interior of the Aron Kodesh, doubled it, and then put a Sefer Torah on it. Amina, so now I say, Tashmish Kedushahu. It actually services Kedusha, V'asr, and it's prohibited to throw it away. V'amar Rava, and Rava says, Hai Tevuta, the Irpat, an Aron Kodesh, the Irpat that fell apart, is mi'abdo teifa zutrati, to make of it a smaller Aron Kodesh, shari is allowed, because you're not lowering its Kedusha. But kursaya, to make a bima, is asr, is prohibited. Interesting. The bima holds the Sefer Torah. The Aron Kodesh holds the Sefer Torah. But the Aron Kodesh holds the Sefer Torah on a permanent basis, and the bima holds the Sefer Torah only when you're reading it. So the Aron Kodesh has more Kedusha than the bima. You can't lower the wood that the Aron Kodesh is made of by making a bima out of it, because the Aron Kodesh, which holds the Sefer Torah on a regular basis, has more Kedusha than the bima that holds the Sefer Torah sometimes. V'omar Rava, and Rava says, Hai Prisa, that same curtain that lined the interior of an Aron Kodesh, debola, it wore out, leme'ebde Prisa lesifrei shari, to make a cover for a Sefer Torah is allowed, because the cover of the Sefer Torah is no less than the curtain that was inside the Aron Kodesh. In fact, the curtain inside the Aron Kodesh was a servant of a servant. It served the Aron, which served the Sefer Torah. Now that you're making a cover for the Sefer Torah itself, it's even better. But l'chumashim, sometimes they used to have a scroll that only had Bereshit in it, or only Shemot. That's not a Sefer Torah. Aser, it's Aser. Because this curtain inside the Aron Kodesh once serviced the service of a Sefer Torah. You can't use it now to service only a scroll of a Chumash, of a Bereshit or a Shemot. V'amar Rava, and Rava says, Hanizvili de Chumashi, sacks that they used to hold Chumashim in, and bekamteri de Sifri, and boxes they held Sifrei Torah, Tashmish Kedusha ninu, are considered servicing Kedusha, v'nignazin, and they need Geniza. The Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? The Gemara says, Ma'u detema, perhaps we should say, Hani, these boxes or sacks, lav lekavod avidan, are not made to honor the Svarim or the Sefer Torah, lenaturi ba'alma avidi, they're only meant to protect it. And since it's only meant to protect it, it doesn't have Kedusha, Kamash Malana teaches us that they do become Kodesh. Let me explain. Let's say a bookstore here in Montreal would get a shipment of mezuzot from Israel by FedEx or by some shipping company, and it would be wrapped very carefully in a box. Would that box that holds those scrolls of mezuzah need Geniza? And the answer is no. But why? Isn't it considered a tashmish of Kedusha? Isn't it holding the mezuzot? The answer is, but it wasn't meant to honor the mezuzot, it's only meant to protect them. And therefore, since it only serves as a protective unit, it doesn't need Geniza. So therefore, let's say your mezuzah cover not only protects the mezuzah, but it also is decorative. It enhances the mitzvah. And since it also enhances the mitzvah, that mezuzah cover is tashmish kedusha, which needs geniza. If you have a tefillin bag not only protects your tefillin, it also enhances your tefillin. It's nice, it's beautiful, and it's meant to beautify it. Therefore, it needs geniza. I remember when I was bar mitzvah, I got my tefillin, and I got a tefillin bag. Eventually, when I got married, I got a new talis bag and a new tefillin bag, so I had an old tefillin bag lying around. Didn't know what to do with my old tefillin bag, so I started using it ignorantly for all kinds of stuff. If I had some old tzitzis, I put it in there. I had a gartel, a thing I put around my waist for davening, I put it there. I came back from Israel, and I had some coins from Israel. For some reason, I put them in there as well. Then I found out that it's terrible, because the tefillin bag was tashmish kedusha, and if it was tashmish kedusha, it can't be used for tashmish mitzvah. I can't even use it to hold tzitzis. It's certainly not a gartel, and certainly not for coins, even if it's their coins from Israel. So you have to be careful. Tashmish kedusha, things that are used for kedusha, need geniza. Things used for mitzvah can be discarded in a respectful manner. Having said that, maybe I'll try to keep this simple. There's a dispute between the Ramban and the Ran whether a Beit HaKnesset, a building, is called Tashmishe Kedusha or Tashmishe Mitzvah. There's a mitzvah that's done in the Beit HaKnesset, we pray there. So since we pray, we do a mitzvah. So the building is called Tashmishe Mitzvah. Or perhaps, as far as the Sefer Torah that's in the Beit Knesset, then the Beit Knesset wouldn't be considered Tashmishe Kedusha, because the Sefer Torah is in Aron Kodesh, and the Aron Kodesh is in the building. So the building is only Tashmish the Tashmish. It services the Aron, which services the Sefer Torah. But because we say Kadosh, 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 and because we say Yitkadal v'Yitkadash Shmei Rabbah, and we say Yehei Shmei Rabbah, so we say Dvarim Shebekdusha. So when we say Dvarim Shebekdusha, does that mean that the Dvarim Shebekdusha that we say are an object of Kedusha? Are the words objects of Kedusha? Therefore the building becomes Tashmishe Kedusha, or words themselves cannot have a Kedusha, and therefore we're just doing a mitzvah when we say the words, and the building where we say those words becomes Tashmish Mitzvah. Again, Tashmishe Kedusha need to be buried. Tashmishe Mitzvah can be discarded. What is a Beit Knesset? Is a Beit Knesset Tashmishe Kedusha because the words that we daven there make it Kodesh, or is it Tashmishe Mitzvah? It's a building where we do a mitzvah. But if it's Tashmishe Mitzvah, so why are we so particular with what we do with the money? So it could be, says the Ramban, because it's a building which is always used for this mitzvah, so in order to respect it, they gave it a certain level of respect. But nevertheless, it's not really called Tashmishe Kedusha. This could explain how the Gemara before suggested that you can give the Beit HaKnesset away as a gift. If the Beit HaKnesset is only Tashmishay Mitzvah, as the Ramban says, then it's only Tashmishay Mitzvah. So if I give it away as a gift, it's okay. It doesn't need Geniza. And especially, I'm not really disrespecting it because I did get something in return. Even though what I got in return might have been an object, or maybe it was a service, like a lawyer or an accountant or a dentist that provided a service. But I didn't give it away for nothing. I didn't really disrespect the Beit Knesset, and since the Beit Knesset only is Tashmishay Mitzvah, it's good enough. But if it's Tashmishay Kedusha, then how could you possibly give a Beit HaKnesset away, and how can the Kedusha be removed from it? And therefore, since the Beit Knesset is Tashmisha Kedusha, only if you receive actually something at the time of the exchange can you exchange the Beit Knesset, because the Kedusha will go on the object you received in return, or the Kedusha will go on the money you received in return. So perhaps that would be an explanation why you may or may not give away the Beit Knesset as a gift. If it's Tashmisha Kedusha, you can't give it away as a gift, because the Kedusha has nowhere to go. If it's Tashmisha Mitzvah, then you can give it away as a gift. The only thing is, it's disrespectful to give it away as a freebie. But if the community got something in return, they could give it away as a gift. Okay, I'm going to go over now to Haggada Shel Pesach. I'm going to answer a few quick questions, although they're not in order. I got a call today, and a few questions were asked. One question was, in Haggada Shel Pesach, there's a story of a number of Tanoim who were in Bnei Brak, and they were telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim until the morning. Why is that mentioned in the Haggadah? The answer is because at the end of Avodah Meyinu it says that even we are kulanu chachamim, kulanu nevonim, kulanu zkenim, kulanu yodim et haTorah, even if we are scholars and knowledgeable and we know everything, there's still a mitzvah to reinforce the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim by telling it in detail and at length. And the more you tell, the more praise you deserve. So then the Haggadah tells us a story of Tanoim, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, etc., who also spent all night telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, even though they certainly were scholars and knowledgeable and certainly knew the story. And that proves the point, that no matter how well you know it, there's a mitzvah to retell it and relive the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Another question was asked. It says in the Haggada, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said that he was about 70 years old, and he was never able to accomplish that Yetzias Mitzrayim should be remembered both morning and evening, as we do at the end of Kriyat Shema. We say, Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, and Kriyat Shema shel Shachrit and Kriyat Shema shel Arvit. What's that doing in the Haggada Shel Pesach? I believe there's a Ramban somewhere that says that the way memory works is you need to study something or experience something deeply, and that really embeds it into your memory, but then you need to maintain it from time to time. You don't have to deepen it, you need to maintain it. And then once in a long while, you need to re-deepen it again. So from time to time, you deepen the memory, you deepen the experience, and then along the way, from one deepening to the other, you maintain it. The way we deepen the experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim is by telling the story of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim in detail at the Seder. The way we maintain it is by mentioning it in passing. Well, we mention it at the end of Kriyat Shema, Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah felt that it really needed to be done twice a day, once in Kriyat Shema shel Shachris and once in Kriyat Shema shel Arvis, but he couldn't prove it until Ben Zoma said there's a pasuk, L'man tizkor, you should remember, Yom Tzeitcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, the day you went out of Mitzrayim, Kol Yemei Chayecha. Kol Yemei Chayecha. So Yemei Chayecha would have meant to remember it during the day, and the Kol means even at night as well. So that's what it's doing in the Haggada. It's telling you that what we are deepening at the actual Seder night is reinforced on a daily basis. Okay, another question was asked, why after the 10 Makot does Rabbi Yehuda say, the Tzach Adash Ba'achav? The Tzach stands for Dam, Tzfardei Akinim, Adash stands for Orov Dever Shchin, and Ba'achav stands for Borod, Arba, Choshech, and Bechorod. Why did he give that contracted version of the 10 Makot? There is a midrash that contracted version of the Makot, Detzach Adash Ba'achav, were letters actually on Moshe Rabbeinu's stick that he used to bring about the Makot. I also read once that Paro arrogantly said, Mi Hashem Asher Eshma Bekolo, who is God that I need to listen to his voice? Detzach Adash Ba'achav, you have time at home, you can take your calculator, equals 501. So therefore, Asher also equals 501. So Paro said, Mi Hashem, who is this God, Asher Eshma Bekolo, that I need to listen to his voice. But unknowingly he said Asher because of the 501, Eshma Bekolo, I will listen to God's voice, and the Tzach Adash Ba'achav equals 501. Also, Rabbi Yehuda said that when a person teaches a Talmud, he should try to teach in a short manner. He should be clear, articulate, and brief. So he proved it by making this memory aid. Rather than remembering Dam Tzvardea Kinim Orov, he gave us the Tzach Adash Ba'achav, because that was his motto, always keep it short. Another question was asked. It says in the Haggada Shel Pesach that when it came to Makot Bechorot, God says, Ani v'lo malach, ani v'lo saraf, ani v'lo shliach, I, God alone, no agent, no angel, no burning angel, nobody else did Makot Bechorot, but I myself, I, God, did it. I and nobody else. So the question is an old question, why was it the Makot Bechorot was done by God alone, and why the other Makot could be done by an agent, a malach could bring the Makkah on the Egyptians? So I gave a mashal, I gave a parable, but it's going to take time to go through the parable. It's a long story. Imagine if once upon a time there were terrorists who captured the king's son. They kidnapped the king's son and ran away with him. The king and his army looked far and wide for a long time to try to find the prince, but they couldn't find him. Until after many years, one day, somebody from the army came and told the king, Mazal Tov, we found your son. We found the terrorists that are holding him, and they're holed up in a certain building. It's a large building, it's a massive building, it's a fortress, but they're in there and they've got your son. We know where he is, and we've surrounded the building. The king says to this head of the SWAT team, the head of this commando unit, he says, okay, so what's the plan? How do we get my son out of there? So he says, what we do is, first we cut off the water supply, then we shine bright lights into their windows, and then we make a lot of noise, and we keep them up, we don't let them sleep. And we tell them, they better give up the son because there's no way out, they can't get out. We threaten them, we tell them that it's hopeless, their situation, they'll never be able to get away, they should come out with their hands up. And we batter away at them psychologically in every way we can for a long time. Then when we feel we finally really weaken them very much, then we put explosives up against the door, we blow the doors, we rush in and we grab your son. King said it's a terrific plan, only one point. When you're ready to blow the doors, the first one that's going to go through the doors is me. I want to go through the doors first. So the head of the commando said to the king, Your Majesty, maybe in your youth you were a warrior, you were a hero, maybe you were a member of the Sayeret, but now we have professionals who can do that. It's not necessary, Your Majesty, that you should go in there first. Why do you want to go in first? And the king said, I'll explain it to you, but it's going to take me some time to explain. You see, there's an idea called the Stockholm Syndrome. The Stockholm Syndrome is that psychologists have found that when somebody is a captive, he's a hostage, and he's afraid for his life, he's afraid that his captors will kill him, psychologically he starts to think like his captors. He starts identifying with them. He starts doing the things that they do and starts believing in what they're doing. Because in his mind he realizes that if he thinks like them and acts like them and does like them, then they're not going to harm him. They're going to see him as one of their own. And therefore he'll be safer. So therefore in his mind it's like brainwashing. His mind is brainwashed to act and think and behave like them. That's called the Stockholm Syndrome. You should know that when the Jews were in Mitzrayim for 210 years, it had an effect on us. In fact, when we came to the Yam, and God wanted the Yam should split for the Jewish people, the Malach, the angel of the Yam, said to God, Halalu avdei avodah zarah v'halalu avdei avodah zarah. The Egyptians are idol worshippers, and so are the Jews. The Jews also worshipped idols when they were in Egypt. So what's the difference? God knew the difference. God knew that the Egyptians who worshipped idols really believed in it, but the Jews, they started identifying with the Egyptians and behaving like the Egyptians and doing like the Egyptians due to Stockholm Syndrome, because they needed to identify with their captors in order to survive for self-preservation. But that's not really their identity, that's not really what they believe in. So the king says, listen to me. When you want to cut off the water supply and you want to make the Nile turn to dam, if you want to keep them up at night by sending tzfardeya, if you want to make them uncomfortable with kinim, if you want to frighten them, if you want to make noise, if you want to bring them darkness, if you want to, whatever you want to do, you can do. And you weaken them and you break them down psychologically until you're ready to blow the doors. When you're ready to blow the doors, what I'm afraid is going to happen, you'll go in there with guns blazing and they're going to fire back. One of the people firing back at you is somebody who looks like a terrorist. He behaves like a terrorist. He dressed like a terrorist. He'll yell like a terrorist, and you'll shoot him, not knowing that that's my son. And then afterwards you'll come and you'll tell me you're sorry. You made a mistake. You weren't able to tell the difference. How can you tell who's really a terrorist and who's only acting that way because of the Stockholm Syndrome? But I'm his father. If I go through the door first, I'll recognize my son right away. I don't know how I'll do it. I'll yell at him, I'll shout at him, I'll call him by his name, I'll say something that'll make him recognize me. But at that point, at that crucial point, he will recognize me and he will say, Ze Keli va'anveyu, you are my true father. He'll drop the gun. He'll change. He will no longer be a terrorist. That's why it's very important that no stranger should go through the door first. It's got to be me. And that's why Hashem was the one who had to do Makot B'chorot. Because when we had to pick out the Ben Yisrael between the Mitzrim and the Mitzri from between the Bnei Yisrael, it had to be someone who can really tell what's inside the head of the person you're facing. Is he really a terrorist? Is he really your enemy? Or is he actually your son, who unfortunately in time has started to identify with the enemy? These are some questions I was asked today, and I welcome more questions either by email or by phone or by text. Now I'm going to tell you some things that I was going to teach you. There is a pasuk, Ki b'ka Hashem tzur olamim. Hashem formed the two worlds with ka, yud and hey. You may know this. The world to come, olam haba, was formed with a yud, tiny little letter, and this world, olam hazeh, was formed with a hey. The simanim of the Seder, Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Magid, Rochza, Motzi Matzah, Morer, Korach, Shulchan Orech, Tzafon, Berach, Halal, Nerza, is 15 simanim. There's a symbolism in the 15 simanim, because Ki b'ka Hashem tzur elamim, Hashem formed the two worlds with Yud and Hey, and Yud and Hey is 15. We say Hallelujah, praise Yud K, praise God who created both this world and the world to come. There are 15 Shir Hamalot in Tehillim, from Kapitel Kuf Chaf till Kapitel Kuf Lamed Hey. 15 Shir Hamalot, 15 Song of Steps. There were 15 steps that went from the Ezras Nashim up to the Ezras Yisrael. And there are 15 Dayenus. There's something about the number 15 that says we praise God in 15 ways, because the Yud and the Hey, which equals 15, were the two letters with which God created both this world and the world to come. In fact, at the end of the Dayenus we say, I wish I could show you my fingers, Al Achas, we thank Hashem, we would thank Hashem for each of the 15, but now we thank Hashem for all of them. Achas is 1, and Kama is 2, that makes 3. Vikama is again 2, that makes 5. Kfula, which is doubled, 5 times 2 is 10. And then Umechupelet, we double the 5 another time, and that's 15. So all over the place there are remuzim and hints to this number of 15, because it was with a Yud and a Hey, a 10 and a 5, that God created the world to come and our world as well. After Kadesh, we do Urchatz, we wash our hands without a bracha. Why do we wash our hands without a bracha? It's very complex. I'll take my time to explain. Kohanim used to eat truma. Truma was an offering that the Bnei Yisrael gave to the Kohen, and it had Kedusha. It had a high level of Kedusha. In Daf Yomi, in fact, in today's Daf, it talks about that the Chachamim said hands, unwashed hands. We know about that today. Unwashed hands and unwashed hands have an automatic level of tumah called sheni. It's a lower level of tumah, but the rabbis gave hands that were not washed a lower level of tumah. And therefore, if a Kohen has unwashed hands, he may not touch truma. If he touches truma, he disqualifies the truma, it needs to be destroyed. So Kohanim cannot touch truma with unwashed hands. Most truma that the Kohanim got was grain, and grain was made into bread. So whenever they ate their bread of truma, they had to wash their hands. Shlomo HaMelech established that we, you and I, some of you are not Kohanim, should wash our hands whenever we eat bread, in order to, so to speak, accompany the Kohanim. The Kohanim wash their hands for truma, and we wash our hands for bread, so that they are not alone in their hand washing. We too wash our hands before we eat bread. And therefore we make a bracha, Asher Kedeshanu, B'mitzvotav Etzivanu Al Ntilas Yadayim, that Hashem commanded us. How did he command us? Because he told us to listen to what the rabbis say. And Shlomo HaMelech and the rabbi said we should wash our hands before we eat bread, the way the Kohanim wash their hands before they eat truma. There is a very fancy halacha. Hands that are a sheni, that's a lower level of tumah, whenever they touch a fluid, a beverage, instead of going a level lower from sheni down to shlishi, the fluid goes up one level higher and becomes a rishon. There's a reason for that. I can't go through everything. One day you learn Psachim, at the end of the first parak, or you learn Mishnayos Yadayim, you learn that whenever hands that are a sheni touch fluid or a beverage, instead of going down a step, it goes up a step and becomes a rishon. Once the fluid becomes a rishon, if that fluid now touches food, even if it's not truma, if it's plain food, that food becomes a sheni. And a sheni, there were people that were careful, they didn't like to eat food that was a sheni. So consequently, there was a time whenever people touched food, a fruit or a vegetable that had been washed with water that was wet, they would wash their hands before they ate that fruit or vegetable, because their hands would be a sheni. They would make the water on the fruit or the vegetable into a rishon, which would make the fruit and the vegetable into a sheni, and they wanted to eat their stuff in purity, b'tahara. So they would wash their hands not only for bread, but they would also wash their hands for davar, something, shetibulo b'mashka, that's dipped into a fluid. Since we're going to do karpas, and we're going to dip a vegetable into salt water, so this potato or celery, whatever used for karpas, will be wet. So therefore we wash our hands before we touch that vegetable that's dipped into the salt water. But since we don't do this all year round, we no longer live by that level of purity. Therefore, when we wash our hands for rechatz, we don't make a bracha, because this is not our common custom. But on this night of Pesach, where we want to behave in an extra special manner, we wash our hands before we dip karpas into the salt water. It's very interesting. Why do we eat karpas altogether? There isn't really a great reason. Usually when we make kiddush, afterwards we wash and sit down and we eat a meal. We don't start taking a vegetable, dip it into salt water. So the children ask, why are we doing this? And we tell the children, it's good that you're asking. It's good that you're noticing. So tell me, what else do you notice? What else do you see? And if they start asking about the matzah, and if they start asking about the murr, and if they start asking about reclining or the dipping, we can then start telling them about the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, how we were slaves and we became free. And that's why we eat matzah and murr, and that's why we recline, and that's why we dip. So the purpose of karpas is just, so to speak, to whet the appetite of questioning, so that they start asking. If you're ready to be a little sophisticated, I'll tell you an interesting point. The halacha is that if you are eating bread which is smaller than a kazait, you don't have to wash your hands. If you eat bread that's smaller than a kazait, you don't have to wash your hands. So the question is, so when we eat karpas, it says you should eat less than a kazait. So if you're eating less than a kazait of karpas, so why should we wash our hands? Even if it would be bread and it would be less than a kazait, we wouldn't wash our hands. So if we're eating karpas less than a kazait, for sure, we shouldn't wash our hands. I don't know the answer. Neither does the Mishnah Berurah. He leaves it with a question mark. I'm only really wondering, maybe that too is to bring out the questions. A young child will ask, karpas, why do we eat this stuff altogether? And an older person will ask, why are we washing our hands if it's less than a kazayit? But as long as we're asking questions, let's also ask other questions for which there are the answers. And for the other ones that there are the answers, that's the purpose of the Seder. I don't know if I'll have time. I'll try to do yachatz. We divide the middle matzah in two. The smaller part is the one that we say the Haggada over, and the bigger part is put away for afikoman. Why do we split the matzah? This comes from the Haggada Hegyone Halacha. What is matzah? I'll be very brief. When we came out of Mitzrayim, we ate matzah. The Egyptians rushed us out in the morning when we were planning to let the dough rise and become rye bread. They said, please leave now. We have no time for you to stay. Please go, go, go. So we took out the dough and eventually we just made it into matzah because we'd had no time to let it rise and become rye bread. But what's interesting to note is we ate matzah even when we were slaves. What is slavery? I'm being very brief. Slavery is when your life belongs to someone else. What is life? Life is made of one ingredient, time. So a slave's life belongs to his master. That means his time belongs to his master. So the master would say to the slave, work, 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 work. And the slave would say, but I need to eat. He says, then slap together some flour and water and bake it quickly and eat it. So even when we were slaves, we ate matzah. Holach ma'anya, this is the poor bread, the matzah, the acholu avatana ba'ar de Mitzrayim, that we ate in Egypt when we were slaves. So it's odd. When we were slaves, we ate matzah because the Egyptians wouldn't give us the time to have rye bread. Funny. When we left Egypt, we had matzah because now the shoe's on the other foot. The Egyptians had no time. Now the pressure is on you. For 210 years, the pressure was on us. Now the pressure is on you. So when we look at the matzah, there are two sides of a matzah. There's the matzah of freedom that we ate when we came out of Mitzrayim. There's the matzah of slavery that we ate when we were in Mitzrayim. Therefore, we break the matzah in two. And the smaller piece of matzah represents the matzah of slavery, upon which we say, Avodah Mayinu, we were slaves. And then at the end of the Haggada, and at the end of the meal, when we finally have relived the experience and we're free, we take out the larger matzah, the matzah of our freedom, and remember that this is the matzah that our ancestors took out of Mitzrayim when the Egyptians had no time. And hopefully one day we will have another Geula from this Golus, and Mashiach will come. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I didn't say too much, and I hope I didn't go too fast. You can criticize. I'm a big boy, I can take it. Thank you. Have a great day. You and your family should stay absolutely safe.